Greetings, friends. If you're tuning in live or tuning in later, this is going to be hopefully the first in a series of fairly informal work sessions where I work on my upcoming game and other game materials. And let's see if I can get that. There we go. Share some stuff. Not really working on my main computer today, unfortunately. The MacBook had to go back in the shop for another screen issue. And I'm working on a rather old, not terribly old, but rather old PC. So I'm kind of just getting where everything is. Again, these are going to be informal. Hopefully, at least a few times a week, I will be able to get on here and just start sharing my content creation process as I start gearing up towards the projected hopeful release of this game. Let's see, trying to get everything sort of set up here. If you're there, feel free to pop in and say hi. And part of what I'm doing this, why I'm doing this, is to get used to OBS Studio and some of its really cool features. I tried some virtual backgrounds yesterday. I got it mostly working. They're not quite as good as what you'll see in Zoom, for example. So I do want to point out the constant pitch that I've been reminded that I don't often give is please feel free to go by and stop at fromthetomes.com, and that just is a splash page right now, landing page for links for both the Twitch stream and the YouTube channel, where these videos and other video content will appear later, especially as the game gets closer. And I have quite a few people who watch these, but not many subscribe, so I'm hoping to kind of try to get that base up a little bit, because as we know, that's kind of the key to getting all this up and rolling regularly. So as you see, I've got my GIFs document open there. I've got a chat window open. Feel free to just drop in and say hi and see what's going on. First chat, middle of the day, during the week. I don't expect I'll have a huge viewership. There will be another chat tomorrow night. I will be announcing the topic of that later, and that should be kind of interesting. And it's an extension of a chat a few weeks ago regarding styles of gaming, general, universal styles of gaming, not just my game. So with that, as I said, I'm not really used to this machine that I'm working on today. See, I could just put that large in the background. Well, if people are logging in and they want to see what I'm doing, they can take a closer look, and I can zoom that out. So, with that, I'll get started doing some work for a little bit. So in fact, I was asked this weekend by my friend Tom, where am I at with the game? What's my current focus? And it has been now for the past 3 months, working on the gifts, which if you followed any of these, are basically your character, whatever you want to call them in other games, talents, abilities, special abilities, heroic traits. They're the things that make the hero, that make them more than just, the farmer. Or even separate a competent warrior, a competent soldier from somebody who is, Conan the Barbarian or Jaime Lannister or whatever, one of these figures who have this almost mythic level of ability in whatever they do. And it's not just combat, of course. I just started with the lineage gifts. Everything from a beast companion, you want to be the Beastmaster or have your pet. That's a gift you buy. Now, obviously, you can make friends with animals if you have those abilities later on. I don't actually list this as innate. Gifts are kind of listed as innate or not innate, and progressive and non-progressive. Innate means you have to take it at character creation. And that's tough because you only get 6 points, and I mean, some of these are four points, but they grant you something that in the scope of the game is fairly powerful. Hey, there he is. There's Justin. How's it going? Yeah, we'll see who shows up today. Again, I don't expect this to be the chaos chats of Wednesday night sometimes. Last week was really good. And the week before was good too. And I'm hoping tomorrow night will be good. We'll see. So, there's a human companion, which is like, your retainer if you're a White Wolf player. It's someone who goes, or a henchman, or a sidekick. Item of power, obvious. Usually it's a magic item. Though magic items are rare in this world, this is some sort of legendary item. In this world, it's not D&D or Pathfinder or even some other games where items replace technology. Magic items replace technology. They're utility. In this game, they are legendary objects. For the most part. There are minor ones out there, and I give some examples of that. Like a sorcerer, like a level 1 is a sorcerer's medallion that adds 2 dice to their particular path of casting. Every magic-using character has a path. A sphere, a discipline, whatever you want to call it. And their die pool can be increased or decreased, and this adds to 2 dice. That's a minor one. That's something many sorceress or magical characters might have. A level 3 is an iron mask that causes fear to those who gaze upon it. And that's actually a stem off from one of the campaign playtests. It's not as powerful as the mask they had in the campaign playtest. That was an artifact, literally an artifact they had to deal with. But a dagger whose blade always drips venom. So these is what gifts are. And there's all, some of you know I've worked up this whole structure that went beyond just a few little bonuses and boosts for characters. The commentary was, through the various 2 years of playtesting, alright, well, it's supposed to be a game where you're this badass sword or sorcerer in this, emerging Bronze Age era world, but I still just kind of feel like a guy with a couple cool abilities. So, of course, then you make magic a little bit less freeform and subtle and make it more like fantasy magic, common fantasy magic. And it's not at all like common fantasy magic. There's obviously elements people recognize. Certain casters have a ranged attack. They can control weather. They can manipulate people's minds. Those are things that are common. But the way they act in this world is definitely more potent. If you are a magic-using character in this world, it's kind of a big deal. And so then, of course, everybody said, well, that sorcerer can turn the entire battlefield to mud or have black tentacles spring from the shadows and drain everyone's essence. All my guy's doing is swinging a sword. So I said, okay. So I went back and I went in and I added combat paths, battle style paths, as I call them. And then, of course, it became an issue. Well, these guys both have these ass-beating powers, that the sorcerers can take over someone's mind, and the swordsman can walk in and take one swing of the sword and kill 5 opponents. What about my character who wants to be a merchant or wants to be a fast talker or a fence or something like that? So then, of course, I added even more. But, in all that, the one thing I didn't want to do, and I've had this discussion with people, that magic and special abilities tend to be these kind of augmentations or manipulations of the system, essentially, right? Like, we can fantasize it however we want. I cast a fireball and it springs from my hands and it flies through the air and your enemies duck as the ball of fire grows and finally explodes. But what you're really doing is you're shortcutting. Magic is your shortcut. Special abilities are your shortcut. Instead of having to fight all those enemies and take damage and roll dice, you've made a shortcut in which you just blow away a bunch of enemies. That's effectively, in these games, what magic is part of this manipulation of the system. And I wanted these, of course, that's what they are, like adroit focus, right? So a hero with this talent is thought of as a brilliant master or genius in a specific task or knowledge base. It is associated with one skill that has Mind is a base attribute. This is in addition to any bonuses or enhancements. The skill must be chosen when a Droid Focus is learned. This skill, the sage may decipher the words of an ancient tablet, whose meaning is otherwise lost, or as a way a guide may discover the near invisible passage of a beast, long thought to only be a myth. Channeled a little bit of Josh Gates. I think I might have been watching Unknown X or something when I wrote that, which is kind of funny. But so this is taking one of your skills and allowing it to be far more powerful than normal. And if it's unopposed, what it does is it reduces challenge ratings. And challenge ratings, I think I have easy, average, difficult, arduous, nearly impossible. I'd have to go back through and look through the actual list, but I have about 5 different levels of challenge rating, 5 or 6 different levels. And it's a shortcut. It reduces the skill level, right? So if you choose a specialization of this in tracking, you become Aragorn the Ranger, right? You're able to, or Strider the Ranger, you're able to look at a vague disturbance in sandy soil and go, they all went that way, and there's 8 of them. So this is how your character becomes, really specialized in something. That's not necessarily combat. In fact, it's never in this skill. If you take this talent, it's never combat. But I wanted this to resonate within the world. I didn't want these things to be these static descriptions of, your hero gets this. I mean, we all know most players and certainly most game masters are capable of creating a scene around these unusual things that happen in a game. But I wanted the player to do 2 things. When they saw the flavor text, it wanted to give them an idea of how this could read in their game experience, right? Someone just said, the only problem is your banner's the biggest thing on there. We should see more of your content. Haha, silly me. No ego problems here. Actually, not. For my ego, I'd be the biggest thing here. I'm not quite that egomaniacal. Quite. Some would argue otherwise. I've had some discussions otherwise. So yeah, here's a Droid Focus. Of course I'm pointing to it on Twitch, which isn't being streamed. Or isn't visible. That's not visible. So here's a Droid Focus, and I wanted to place these in the world. I wanted them to not only be an indication of what can my character do, what benefit does it give, mechanical benefit, but how does it fit into the world, and how do you see it being narrated? And when I wrote these, I borrowed from a lot of things. I borrowed, obviously, as most of you who followed this know, the storyteller system is a big influence on this game, the original storyteller system. As from our vampire game last week, we can attest that sometimes you'll have 9 dice in the storyteller system and you'll still fail or botch, which was the single biggest flaw of that game. So hopefully this game allows for less of that kind of silliness where the supposed master of this discipline fails more than they succeed. Ones don't cancel anything. In fact, White Wolf gamers have sat down to this game and have said, well, what do 1s do? And I've said, well, they don't do anything unless you have no successes and you have a 1 left over. Then it's a complication. Or, no, I'm sorry. If you have more 1s than you do successes, that's the rule. So if you roll 8 1s and you have dice pool 12, you roll 5 1s and 4 successes. A 1 also never succeeds. So, you have 4 successes. They don't get canceled. You can still succeed. But if you've rolled more 1s than you have successes, then something really unexpected or catastrophic happens. And after just playing Star Wars this past weekend, it's interesting because I did also think about that. I thought about the luck die in Star Wars T6 RPG. And it really functions similarly to that. There's more of a chance in Star Wars to botch. We've only had a few botches in this, or a few what I call complications, which is if you get more 1s than success. We've only had a few. And they've usually been pretty spectacular. Like our warrior Apata being so drunk he couldn't wake up as the undead were crawling out of the lake and coming towards, all zeroing in on the party for said magic artifact I discussed before. They had been summoned up to come and try to, wear down the town and the party and get this artifact. And our one warrior is there completely comatose and unconscious, and no one could wake him up because he had botched one of his recovery rolls from a heavy night of drinking. It was rather humorous. But yeah, so I borrowed heavily from the storytellers. That was a tangent. I borrowed heavily from the storyteller system in terms of how the dice work and the flavor text. Believe it or not, Magic the Gathering, early Magic the Gathering, part of the joy of that game early on, I'm talking, first editions, the alpha editions of it and beta editions of it, was you were opening this pack of cards, no access to this world. And then you had this cool story about this creature on the card or this place on the card. And it informed you of the nature of the world. You started feeling like you were in this world just from playing this card game, which was all a mathematical exercise. Magic is a mathematical exercise. Most of those types of card games are. You could even have it argued that most RPG systems are. What is now Savage Worlds, formerly Deadlands, and I thought Deadlands did this beautifully in the early editions of Deadlands, that incorporated the flavor of the game and the world into the mechanical discussions. So that's where I started going with the flavor text. And in this case, an adroit focus, I discuss somebody who has an adroit focus in cooking. Right? Most people don't think, why would my character have that? Well, I don't know. What else could they do with it? So it wasn't just seeing the plants or the recipes or the thickness of the ceramic pots. Jono was able to see the way the liquids would combine with the ingredients. He would smell the aromas, taste the flavors, and even hear the bubbling of the fermentation long before he fired up the pot. The skill and practice was always a demand, but he from an early age had a complete intuition. The skill and practice was always demand, yeah. But yeah, so I have to clean up the language. But he from an early age had a complete intuition for cooking and brewing. So I borrowed from both my own experiences in cooking and brewing, and of course then I thought about some of my friends who are professionals in both of those, and how they can just look at a set of ingredients and know what it's going to taste like and know how it's going to work. And that to me is magic, right? That to me is as magic as fantasy magic. But what I didn't want to do is have this all exist in this bubble, So it's interesting. I'm running on this old PC. I have 0 dropped frames so far. That's better than I usually get with the MacBook. But I think the difference could be because I'm also on at 11 in the middle of the day, and there's very few other people on right now. And that's the advantage of being on sabbatical to write a game. I can do this. So I'll be doing this at different times. These aren't going to be scheduled chats. Again, please subscribe to the Twitch stream. Go over to the social media section if you want to keep abreast of my coming on and babbling on about this stuff. So I'm going to keep the chat window open. Going to have my work window open. And I'm going to just be writing a little bit. And I'll probably talk a little bit about it as I work on it. Let me try to resize, scale this all so we can actually see everything. I do have less screen resolution than I normally do on my MacBooks. I also usually have several monitors going. For some reason, this machine won't read the monitor. Like I said, it's an old machine that was not expensive at the time. So I believe I was on the Magic as the supernatural talents. There were originally several more supernatural talents, such as being an avatar of one of the gods or goddesses of the land, being a shapeshifter, a legit shapeshifter, not someone who just does it through a magic path, but basically a werewolf or a werebear or something. It got very complicated. It got so complicated, almost started becoming its own system, and I just decided, man, I think I need to shelve these for now. I have them in another document. And I think I need to get some systems, other systems and world stuff in place before I do that. Supplements. Supplements, anyone? That's what I always tell my students. That's a supplement, you know. I should probably bump this out on Discord that I'm doing this as well. So one suggestion I just got: should get a regular schedule for this and post it. Yeah, I know. Now, the problem is right now I'm still figuring out my regular schedule. Huh. Yeah, people are using my Discord. I must admit I'm pretty bad at it. About keeping yourself. Let's see. Now let's get on there afterwards and chat a little bit. Send it a note here. Pretty cool. A lot of people are using my Discord. Are using this. I guess I should log on more often. All right. Here we are, supernatural gifts, magic. As we see that there's a purchase cost. Now I'd start thinking of some text. Writing is a weird thing. Writing's the weirdest thing I do. Most you know I also do photography and graphic arts, media, music and audio. Those are all very immediate task-based things. Go out and shoot a picture, come home, edit in Photoshop. It's done. Writing is this weird process. I think Taika Waititi just said, I don't know if it was really him, but I saw a quote from him. Sometimes writing is staring at your blank draft for 8 hours, closing your laptop, and you have written for 8 hours. And that's really it. With this stuff, though, it's pretty targeted. I can usually figure this out pretty quickly. So let's see. Flavor text for magic is tough because there's 3 different types of magic. I haven't talked a lot about witchcraft yet, so I think I will, or hearth magic, depending how you want to phrase it. First thing I do is I actually go back and I check out my naming document. There's an internal name structure in the game, I talk a lot about this in some of my longer chats at the YouTube channel. But the one thing I'm trying to avoid, and it suggests other people avoid, is saying, "Oh, I'm Gondolin the elf." Though there are no elves. Kind of making up these fantasy names that don't have any context, and I try to discourage that in this world. And part of how I discourage that is in the character creation document, I've got a naming guide. For the different cultures. So let's see. Underrepresented culture, the Varinka. Kind of the outcast people that live in the edge of the wastes in a fallen city that are more sorcerous than other cultures. They have a little bit of the H.P. Lovecraft reference coming in terms of their city being at one time the home of some sort of fallen god, goddess, entity, alien entity. I don't know why this doesn't. it's just a little bit of flavor text. I'm trying to keep it short paragraph each. Of course, some are a little bit longer if I get carried away. These is all the very first pass of all this flavor text. It hasn't been edited or proofread. That's going to be a whole other process. Like I said, Magic is specifically tough because it's so big. It's such a broad part. I decided to focus here on a character versed in witchcraft doing some scrying with fire. Whenever somebody chooses the scrying path, they have to choose some sort of focus that they use or that aids them in it. I tend to do a single pass and then go in and do some revision over the next several days. And of course there will be final edits that are going to come in. Someone's asking for the link. Hey, there it is. There's Tom. Well, I'm just doing some current writing. And on the flavor text, that's the topic. Again, this won't substitute the Wednesday night chats, and hopefully these are going to be regular, and I'll be doing it a couple different time periods throughout the week, so different people in different parts of the world and country can log on. But I'm working on the flavor text for the game right now, and I was just discussing that process. And I actually had to send the link to someone for the chat. I'm on the old PC right now. There we go. So the next one's Magic Dabbler. So Magic in the game as a gift that takes up most of your free gift points, but it affords you quite a bit of power right off the bat. Whereas I decided to institute a dabbler focus, a dabbler discipline gift. That's the word I'm using for this game, not discipline. A gift that allows you to know just a little bit of magic and doesn't allow you as much progression as the main one. So get some flavor text in for that. Again, I'll go back and consult the naming document. Alright. So I'll name this. I'll name this after a long time character in many a game, because it does actually fit these conventions. Yeah, I have something like that for direction finding. I told you we weren't lost. That's the flavor text for direction finding, at least as of right now. Ripe, brimming, full, rich, ripe. Rich sounds like a kind of common word. Not as descriptive. Let me consult synonym.com and see if this is actually a word, or dictionary.com and see if this is actually a word. It is. Bounteous. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Are there penalties for using magic? This has been the ongoing debate. You have to spend essence to use magic. You can augment magic with corruption points. If you ever played Elric, the old Elric RPG, Stormbringer, Elric/Stormbringer, depending which edition, I modeled some of the magic off of that. That magic's inherently corruptive. If you just cast within your limits, you'll spend essence or lose essence to do it. When you have no more essence, which comes back naturally through rest, you can't cast any more magic. That's your magic points, basically. You can lose no essence when casting a powerful spell, or you can lose a little bit of essence. We've seen people lose 3 of their 10 points of essence casting a weedy spell because they just rolled really poorly, though the chance is very slim. if you overreach, if you try to, you can cast spells far beyond, or cast effects far beyond your ability, then you run the risk of both of extended essence depletion. You can't become permanently damaged or killed from most castings. If you start using corruption to do it, tapping corruption to do it, then you can have ill effects, and then it's kind of the equivalent of a save versus corruption to see if anything else horrible happens to you. So I didn't want to make it unusable, but I didn't want it to be as utilitarian as most RPGs. Yeah, Elric was really interesting. It had one of the best corruption mechanisms in character development. You could trade off parts of your character abilities for more magic powers, and your character would become more corrupt. You know, it was become basically a Warhammer mutant. You know, in character creation, it was pretty interesting. I didn't quite go that far yet. It's been discussed. Bounteous. See, what would the merchant be carrying that could easily be snatched but still valuable? Probably wouldn't have coin that openly available. Or I can just revise the narrative, right? Oh, hey, first time viewer. Nice to see you. Saves versus death. Thanks. Glad you liked the look of the settings so far. I'm hoping to get some more materials out there soon for people to see more of it. There's a slight preview if you haven't seen it over at hardlinerpg.com. I would, if I spelled it correctly, this would help, right? Yeah, that one. Yes, that takes to it. Oh, there'll be a full. Yes. Yeah, it's a little darker, a little grittier than a lot of settings that are out there. I mean, I've seen it described as Conan-ish, Elric-ish, you know, Grey Mouser-ish, but it's also set in an effectively non-Western setting. It's closer to our Fertile Crescent. Or perhaps some variant of just post-Roman Empire, Central Balkan territory. This. Thanks. I'm looking forward to seeing it out there. Hoping that I was just talking to a friend of mine this weekend. I really got to get out to some cons. Hopefully cons will be back. Hopefully cons will be back in full this year. So yeah, the one sort of character that several people after they played the game said it'd be really cool to play like a thief type character or rogue type character with just enough magic to do things like blend into the shadows and then vanish into the shadows, or an assassin character like that. I'd already had that in mind. And so I figure I'll use that as the example for the Dabbler, just to give people an idea of what's going on. So magic device. Now this is tougher. I can go back and look at the magic device rules. Greetings to Killer Bits. How are you? Good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. By the way, I don't know who I know or don't know from either real life or some other internet locale, so you can introduce yourself if you want. You don't have to introduce yourself if I don't know. Yeah, so today is just kind of a work session. I'm going to be streaming these work sessions, and today I'm working on flavor text. Wednesday nights, so far it's been steady on Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. There's been kind of roundtable chats about a specific gaming topic. Either it's last week was character races. I don't know if you're on one of the Pathfinder or TTRPG groups I'm on. It was an interesting discussion between what was going on in terms of kind of the general thought of the gaming world and discussions happening in my gaming groups. So, cool. Yeah, some of you are coming from more video game focused stuff, and that's cool too. I don't get to play video games a lot now, but I definitely enjoy it. This is more tabletop geared, but hey, drop in, say hi, chat with folks. That's why the chat room's open. As long as it's largely gaming focused or topical. Magic Device. So I have to go back and look up my rules for Magic Device. This is the problem when you're working over like a dozen different documents. Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't tried Red. I mean, I'm an old guy. I played Cyberpunk years ago, back in the old days, and I played and ran a good amount of it. I haven't looked at Red yet. I should take a look. Yeah, well, so the balance was always the issue on the old one, and PJ is not on now. PJ is one of my old-time gaming buddies. Oh, good. Cool, Killer Bits. And, the balance was always an issue in 2020. It was always like, well, my character has all this power armor, so you literally can't kill him until you drop a hover tank on him, or just gets killed instantly as soon as they walk out their front door by a gang member. So it was always a weird balance. But I've heard Red is much better, and I've got a couple friends who have the book, So I wouldn't be object to playing a game. And I got friends who are really into the genre, so that'd be kind of cool. Let's see. So this is a magic device. So in the magic rules, there is an alternate augmentation that a magic user can buy or find later or craft later that enhance. It's their focus, their magical focus. If you want to take it from other games, it's a magical focus. That's kind of what I was going with. And now I just got to go back and reread what I said about them before I add any flavor text about them. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. There's that. Well, thanks for tuning in, people. I enjoy it. I was kind of shocked at one point. I logged in. One of my streams had like 75 views. I'm like, man, people sat around and watched that video of me talking about games. That's crazy. Hey, I'll take it. Let's see. Magic System. There we go. Yeah, the drama in 2020 was really hilarious. Like the descriptions of what happens to your character if they get shot. That was pretty capital stuff there. I remember the first time we played it and the one guy got shot in the leg and the description we were laughing for like 20 minutes. Yeah, it's give and take. Last chat session, we talked a little bit about the Hardwired supplement for 2020, which is by Walter John Williams, who also wrote the book of that name. And that was crazy, because that had a totally different take on some of the cyber technology and weapons technology and how it worked. And it really changed things in terms of 2020, but it was really interesting. I remember using a bit of that and a bit of the standard 2020 rules. Augmentation and foci. Here we are. Yes, enhancing magic. All right, see you later. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, I'll probably go for about another 45 minutes or an hour today. The Wednesday night chats are usually like a focused hour and change. These are going to be kind of running, and like my one buddy said, you should put up a schedule. When I actually get a little more coherent schedule, I will in fact be posting some stuff. Wednesdays are our usual topical chat. It's rough. It's 7 p.m. in the evening. I'll probably be mixing that up too. So it's 7 p.m. Eastern time, and that's when I usually throw out a topic and talk a little bit about it. And then we've had everything from 2 other people to 10 other people or more coming in and chatting about it and talking about it and giving personal experiences, personal takes. If you subscribe to this, you'll get the notification. Also, I'm on both Twitter and Facebook, and not so much Instagram right now due to a hacking issue. I haven't bothered to set it back up again. And YouTube at fromthetomes.com or Fox and Boar Games at Fox and Boar Games. So that tends to be where I post my notifications about stuff. Yeah, I'd love to see you. I mean, pop in when you can. I keep it super casual. Justin, who's one of my local friends, we game, and Tom Wendell Burke he pops on pretty regularly. We got a core of about half a dozen that pop on regularly to chat, and then we usually have other people coming in and out. So, yeah, feel free. Good to see you. Always feel free to jump on here and share your own stuff too. Share your own work and your own games and whatever you're doing. Let's see, is it casting rituals? Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So, Wolfie Russell, who was in last weekend, asked me that same thing when I started writing this game, and he said, why are you reinventing the wheel? Basically, well, yeah, I think you nailed it. Um, the feel of a game like this is what I've been. Now, I haven't looked at the Conan game. I have a copy of it. I mean, I've looked at it. I haven't really deeply read it. But what I wanted was a game where the setting and the culture. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you missed last week. Yeah. Um, yeah, we didn't talk about this last week. I'm glad you enjoyed the day at the beach. That's more important sometimes than sitting online and chatting with friends about games. But which is great too. But sometimes you need to get out. This past weekend I was pretty much offline. My friends Tom and Craig, Tom who I've worked on game design with, and they were down for the weekend, so I just tuned out. I made my couple stupid posts about the Glory Hole Dwarven Mine, that module that I had, which we didn't play. We played Star Wars, as you saw, but that was kind of the joke of the weekend. Oh, this is what we're playing. But yeah, I wanted a game that was also really character focused. And I know all the games are character focused, but I wanted something that kind of captured like some of the early Storyteller and Ars Magica setup where the characters were really important in the setting. Yeah, no, and I definitely want to talk about more about that. And I have talked about that a little bit in the past, but I imagine we'll be talking about that a lot more as the game gets closer to publication. And by the way, I'm still interested in art. Like I said, I've got Jeff, who's kind of like he's doing a lot of the because he's already deep into it. He's actually going to be taking a bit of a break because he's doing an internship with a pretty famous artist. Um, yeah. I'm sorry. I got to fix that. Like I said, I haven't gotten my Instagram back up and going, but thanks for pointing that out. I got to go back and I've got to get all that get all that straightened back out. I had a major hacking. I had several pages and Instagram and Twitter. Twitter was okay, but Instagram and Facebook, my former Facebook presence had a large number of followers, and I got hacked and it got shut down because they were posting stuff on it. But yeah, the Instagram. I've been so annoyed. I've been resistant to setting it back up, but I have to do that as it gets closer to game release. But yeah, as far as a fantasy game, I mean, I see this as being very different, and people who have played it have said it feels very different than any other fantasy game because it's not so much concerned with the high fantasy aspects. For example, as I've said, humans are the only playable species right now. Race, species. That was a whole big discussion. What do we call it? Um, Life form. They're the only playable life form right now. And I did that intentionally, so it became focused on this concept of people, of humans and culture as important. There's no demo of it out yet. That's what I'm working towards, is to get a playtest package that I can send to people. I will start running Roll20 based and Discord based playtests probably September-ish. September-ish, October-ish. And then I'll be putting out notes in my various social media if you want to jump in on a playtest. And I hope to get to some cons this year. And I hope to get it and do some playtesting. I think that's the next step that I have. Because the core rules seem to be working. A lot of the augmentation seems to be working. The alternate rules seem to be working. Alright. Yeah, I think it'd be fun. Magic device. Alright, so some of the gifts also have prerequisites. Obviously, to use a magic device, you have to have the magic gift. So that should include Ore Dabbler. This game has no classes and levels either. It's all skill based. It's all point based freeform character construction. So that's what's interesting. I don't have a trained statistician. I have two longtime friends and playtesters and gamers and one game developer who are wizards with numbers. That is not me. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a creative person. Numbers are not my thing. And what's funny is the first few weeks when I started floating this out there, my one friend Blake, um, he looked at the number spread and he's like, "This is never going to work." Of course, being obstinate, and in my own head, I was like, "Nah, we're going to try it this way." And he's like, "You're." He's like, "These number spreads don't work," And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." I mean, in my mind, I'm like, he's usually right about this stuff. So of course, we did several weeks worth of playtesting, and of course, he was absolutely right. And I do have another colleague who is also a game design instructor. That's part of what I do in real life. Is I teach the art and the creative and the conceptual end of game design, in addition to other graphic arts and photography and stuff. But he's looked at it too, and he's really good with the number spreads as well. So these are all things in any kind of final pass. I do have an editor on board. They're much more content editor, but I believe we will probably definitely have someone go through. I mean, the numbers have been a constant thing. The core system numbers have kind of evened out for the last year or so, have been pretty solid. As soon as you start adding like a new weird gift or magic, you're like, great, Now I have to go back, and change a lot of stuff. Yeah, I mean, any of these systems, until you have 50,000 people or even 10,000 people play your game, or even 1,000 people play your game, you can't conceive of everything. You really can't. And I tell my students that too when they're working on games. And several people I'm talking to new about games they're working on. I always say, like, just play test as much as possible, because for all the theoretical aspect, until a lot of people get their hands on it, you never know. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the issue of the video games too, right? This is why, like, look at the Cyberpunk video game. How long did it take to get out? It came out, and they had to rush it out due to shareholder stress and fan base stress, and then it came out with all these issues. And then people were upset about that. So it's really, video games are a whole other thing. I've seen video game development in action. It's like, wow. You can't just be one guy doing a video game, or girl, or whoever, or one person doing a video game. At this point, you need 400 people to work on it, and you never know what's going to go wrong. So my partner was just playing it, and she's much more into the exploring the game world and interacting with the story. She loved it. Well, we have it on PS5, but she loved it. She had a blast with it. And I know part of the issue is, part of the complaints came from people who played it when it first came out. And there were a lot of issues. I know there were a lot of glitch issues and a lot of patch issues, but that's every game now. I mean, that started in the, I don't know, mid 90s, late 90s, where you bought a game and you were sitting there like, all right, so I gotta wait a month for it to actually work. Yeah, I mean, they were. So I mostly did PC gaming until pretty recently. When I did computer gaming, I mostly did PC gaming, and we just do console gaming now. Like I said, I don't do as much of it as she does. She plays more than I do. But the console gaming is really come a long way, and it's that's what it does. It's there to play a game. I think the last time I bought a new PC game and I spent 2 days patching it to get it to work, I was like, I'm done. I'm out. I just don't really want to do this. Honestly, most of the time that I have now for gaming is tabletop RPG or online tabletop RPG or working on writing games or something like that. So I know I felt restrictions foster actual creativity. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I've talked a lot about that with people, that sometimes too many choices makes it more difficult. Sometimes when you look at old school D&D where you had such a limited number of choices, you had to really role play to make your character unique. On the other hand, I prefer to have the complexity be in developing the character and then have the rules be straightforward and easily mutable. Yeah, I mean, and some people I know only do video games. And in fact, one of our regular players in my in-person group, he came from video games, and he totally walked in the first day, and he came because his wife was really psyched on playing. Who's a good friend of ours. I mean, Andy's a friend of ours too, but I didn't know him as well at the time. And he just was totally blindsided by, like, wait, my character can do anything I want because there's no algorithm telling me I can't, Wait, there's no physics algorithm in place to stop me from jumping on a table and jumping on a chandelier and swinging my sword. He was totally blown away by this concept of it, and he's been pretty hooked. He's taking a break now. He just needs a mental break from a lot of stuff, so he's just chilled out on coming to the group recently, and that's cool. But he's a yeah, it's not an either or situation exactly. You can have both. Yeah, there's no need to restrict, and it depends on the group too. Some groups are perfectly happy playing a tabletop version of a first-person shooter where they just run through a dungeon and kill monsters and get treasure. Hey, that's great. Then again, my group can sit around and talk in character and not actually necessarily even progress a plot for half an afternoon and be very happy doing it. And that's fine too. Yeah, so I mean, I'm really into the in-depth RP. Obviously, I'm writing a game that, for as much as it's into, high magic and sword swinging, it's designed to have a lot of role playing and social elements. At the same time, I also do like to play a game. We get into that discussion a lot too in my various groups. Like, at what point is it collaborative storytelling versus simply playing a game? And I think it's a balance. For me, personally, I like a balance of it. All right. As I said before earlier, this is just the first pass of some of these flavor text bits. I'll go back in later and I do some deep revisions. I think we only got two more to work on right now. These are going to be fairly easy. Some of them were extremely easy to quantify. Yeah, even for the Star Wars game we played this past weekend, it was 90% Mind's Eye. And then we got to a point that we had to put the map and the miniatures out, So, and it was fun because it's even something like Vampire. It's like, oh well, you have to know where that other guy is standing, or that other creature is standing, or whatever. Where your target is standing to attempt to know if I can do what I'm going to do. It's some of us are, I'm better at non-tactical visualization, creative visualization, but sometimes you just need the map and you need to know where things are happening. Okay. Sometimes I feel like I'm just repeating myself with the flavor text, and I go back and reread it, and I'm like, all right, no, you actually did an okay job. I actually managed to vary it a little bit. Yeah, it is and it's not. It's gotten easier actually, because it's good for me too, because in my mind I have the various cities, the geographic features, the types of people, all pretty concrete. But this is helping me really focus and articulate the different roles. Yeah, apartment complexes, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. The high-rise apartment complex, another one. But you know what's funny? Like cyberpunk, that industrialization's part of it, right? It's like that's almost inherent to the feel of the world. That like everything is homogeneous. It's gleaming. It's neon. It's chrome, but it's also homogeneous. Everything is manufactured. Everything is disposable. Everything is like that's part of the world. This is like the actual wording. Yeah, well, like malls, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny. So I travel a good amount. I don't know where you're from, but I travel overseas a lot. It's funny, like in every country I've been in, every city, every modern city, even some of the ancient cities now have like a mall center, shopping. In German it's Kaufzentrum, shopping center, and it's like oh man, there's a mall. Everywhere you go, you find these ubiquitous elements. Like another mall. I was in England living for 2 weeks with a friend in the countryside. A long time ago now, 2001. And it was this pastoral English country. It looked like the Shire. It was right out of the Shire, including the little pub that had been there for 500 years. At one point, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to give you a surprise tonight." And we drove just out of town, around the corner, and there was this mall, like right out of New Jersey, like this mall and theater complex. I was like, "Oh," I was like, "You had to ruin it." He's like, "I thought I'd want to give you a little taste of home." I went to see Lord of the Rings, so that wasn't too bad. Seeing Lord of the Rings with the British audience was very interesting, very different in their responses to it. So it was kind of weird. I was like, oh my god, I felt like I was like in Middle Earth for like a week, and then we drive 2 miles out, back in miserable post industrial world. It's a psychic sense. Let's see. Consult the name chart again. So I should actually make a name chart. I've so far only kind of have some descriptions. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And again, he did it was very, the whole thing was very amusing. It was like, I was like, oh my god, they live in the modern world. I'm not really in the old forest. Let's see, okay, character creation documents. All right, good to chat. Thanks for coming by. It's great to have you. Yeah, try to pop in if you can. I'll be doing more of these sorts of informal chats over the next couple weeks. Good seeing you. Great meeting you. Have fun. Have a good rest of the day. See you later. And now I get to go down the rabbit hole of looking for a name that fits this character that's in my head that I don't have. So the Meluk are plains people, and their language is based on Yoruba, our Yoruba language, Nigerian, modern day Nigeria. Um, and I have some names, but I just realized this would be a cool name, a cool character to give for the flavor text. So I have to go consult some Yoruba. I'm not a linguist. Well, I'm not a linguist, but I play one in role-playing game development. Don't ever go to Yoruba baby names or any of those baby name things, because they're 9 to 10. They're like not right. There's some fairly good language sites out there. Oh, this is a Nigerian site, so it might be a little bit better. You're better off Googling Yoruba language. Finding the names isn't terrible. You can find an actual document, like here's some actual documentation, historical documentation, unfortunately colonial, of Yoruba names, Nigerian names, Ghana names. The good thing is that most names in the Yoruba language and tribal African languages is that they are based on elements or objects or animals. So it's actually definitely a little. Let's see, got a chat from Wendell. Let's see. Oh yeah, just for like random characters, I'll pull up any name site. For stuff that I'm like trying to root in the game world, I do try to go a little deeper. But yeah, I've often Googled random names for characters in the middle of a game session. Yeah, I'm not going to go on the tangent of the Jackson films. I mean, I love them. When I saw Fellowship in the theater, I just sat there because it was like every vision of Middle Earth I'd had as a kid reading the books dumped out onto a screen, including the Balrog, right? I was just like, oh my god. I think after the first movie, once it became popular, my friend Blake always busts on me, as soon as something becomes popular, you hate it. I'm like, well, it's because it usually starts sucking. And it starts pandering and catering to different audiences. And I felt that a lot of the humor, a lot of the stuff that came in the later Jackson movies were, I just didn't, the changes in the story, monumental changes in the plotting and the story. Some of it I didn't mind, but some of it I was just like, you didn't have to do that. But in a way, the cartoons are almost a better rendition of the story than necessarily the Jackson movies. But yes, I grew up watching those cartoons as well. Yeah, I grew up and I was just kind of like, that was my vision of Middle Earth for a long time as a kid. Then as I read the books as I got older, I was like, I formed something closer to what Jackson created, and visually, they're still just amazing. There's still, you watch the Battle of Helm's Deep, and you're still just like, this is crazy. This is so good. African language program at Harvard. Okay, but it's all videos. That's not what I want. Now here's a site from Nigeria about the Yoruba language. Let me try and glean some names out here. This is all for flavor text. People wonder why it takes me so long to write something. Because it's not Joe Bob the Thief. It's because I actually do try to go through and give a little bit of grounding. Here we go. This site's pretty good. And here's some of the documentation, the colonial era documentation, which again, unfortunately, this is also through a Western eye, but at least it gives me a little bit more of a foundation of an understanding of the language. If anyone's interested. It's cool having people pop in and out. I've never been here before. There's this site I'm looking at right now. It's kind of cool. Doesn't have like a name list, but it talks a little bit about the naming structures and the word structures. It's at least good to double check a naming list. Like is this name even really a possible name in that language? And I remember seeing a few like that over the years where I just looked at it, I was like, it's not even a real wording in whatever language I was looking at. Let's see. Now, this is a name list, but it is from Nigeria, so I'm hoping that's a little more accurate. Of course, a lot of these have been shifted post-colonialization to be Christianized as well, which is always difficult when you're talking about a culture that is void of that sort of colonial contact. There we go. Now that's a good one. Means ability or skillful. Specifically, a woman who is skillful. So for psychic sense, that's good. A little thought into how I process my information. Move over there, move over there. There we go. I have to run a little bit and do some music practice. I'm going to be meeting a friend this evening for dinner, so I have to get some other stuff done. But I'd like to at least get through these next two. Next two descriptions. That's a really good question. I would say visually and aesthetically, it is closer to Sword and Sorcery, Pulp Sword and Sorcery. I mean, there's even elements of like John Carter in some of the descriptions, and of course Hyperborea. There are horror elements, but it's not a horror game. It's horror in the sense that the main threat in the world is a for lack of a easy description, a demonic, horrific threat, supernatural threat. I could equate that somewhat to Warhammer in Chaos and how that functions, but not quite the same. Again, more if you go back to Elric, this idea of dark forces and corruption and demons, it functions a little bit more like that. And a little bit like that in Conan. You know, demons are pretty common. Even if they're not demons from our traditional Christian standpoint, they are entities from somewhere else that are antagonistic, malevolent towards humans. So that's kind of the feel. I mean, if you're interested, the best thing to do, I just remind me, I could send you over maybe just some idea boards and some thoughts as to what I was thinking. I've been really going for, if you look at what's on the website, the character portraits and a little bit of the landscape stuff, that's really the overall kind of feel I'm going for and the style I'm going for. Something like Brahms, kind of hyper-realism. Fantastic, but hyper-realism. Not quite as defined and archetypical as Vallejo. But, you know, in that similar kind of dark fantasy tone. Sword and Sorcery tone. Okay. Most of that can be found. Let's go to the website. Well, I posted the website. If you go to, I haven't yet. Again, on the website's the other project I got to start working on. So, by and large, most of the they've all been digital paintings so far. That's what Jeff's been doing. He does a lot of traditional sketches and color work, artwork, then he'll usually digitize it and do a lot of the finishing stuff digitally. But if you go through the blog, there are a number of examples of the work, mostly the character sketches, the art type sketches, or artwork, not sketches, the completed artwork. Someone said that they thought the stream was already done. Let me go double check that. So following a link. Just go to. This isn't live. Unless it dropped the source. Yeah, that should give you a better idea. Oh, I know. I think it marked it as a rerun. I think people didn't realize that it was live. Oh, that could be. All right, I'll have to check the settings on that. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, a little setting in this OBS. All right. Settings. See if I can turn that off. Might be a little late now. Yeah, alright. I'm not going to worry about that now. I'll also have to be aware of that for the future. Alright. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, for some reason it didn't show me as live. Well, that's a pain. But we got a few people in. Well, we're almost done. I'm almost done now. So I'll just have to remember that for future streams. Again, like I said, I'm on a different machine than I have been. And OBS probably had some sort of setting that I didn't see. This version of OBS. Yeah, Tom. There's definitely room for more art. So feel free to shoot me a line and ask me questions on it. Still debating on publication. I'm assuming I'm going to crowdfund it, and I'll definitely have art fees factored into that. And I will, if you produce art that I can use, I will certainly pay you for it, even in advance of the publication. So yeah, just keep me in the loop as to what you're up to. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I mean this has been. I hope your recovery is going well, but I definitely understand things getting thrown in a way that you didn't necessarily anticipate, and that you have to kind of pull yourself back from. It's weird. I posted in a different font. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll do type formatting of the font. One more for the. I guess I better save it, right? That would be comedy. Use that name. to the back to a translator for some more naming ideas, or a title idea in this case. Alright, that's the source of the word there. Okay. All right. I know a couple people actually just said that they didn't realize I was live because of the notice. They were going to log in, but I think I'm actually probably going to take off for today. I'll definitely be doing the Wednesday night chat tomorrow, also on this channel. I'll have to make sure it doesn't set it as a rerun. And I will have hopefully a schedule up of some incoming additional chats where I continue working like this and talking a little bit about the game and the development. Thanks everyone who stopped in. Don't forget there's also a YouTube channel, From the Tones YouTube channel, and Fox and Board Games on nearly all media, all one word, Fox and Board Games. No Instagram yet, but other major social media. And that's where things are going to start appearing. Yeah, thanks for stopping in, Tom. So I think once I make sure this is all saved up, I'm going to close that out for today, and I'll hopefully see some folks tomorrow night. So thanks for coming in.